it's about 1 minute after 1. So I'd like to welcome everyone today. So to the CSPC 2022 pre-conference session. This is a tremendous and exciting panel on the future of flight in advanced air mobility. So we have quite a program and panelists that I'll introduce in a little bit.
You are muted. You are muted.
No, we can hear you, Eric.
You hear me? Okay. Am I okay?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So hopefully that intro was understood. So before I go any further, I just wanted to move to a landing acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm monitoring the future of flight in advanced air mobility panel on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I want to first, I guess, before we go anywhere, I think we'll start with a little video to put a context on AAM. I'll come back and do the intro of the panel and the panelists that we have with us, and also a little bit of intro from a verbal standpoint on AAM. So we'll start with the video first to give you a bit of a context of AAM for those who are not too familiar, and I'll return after the video.
We can't hear the video.
Okay, I guess we'll give that another try to see if we're able to. There we go.
You see how remote we are as an island. It takes a day for us to get our prescriptions. If we have the drone, we could be getting it the same day. I do see it benefiting Penelakut a lot.
We've designed a box to protect the lung, to maintain its temperature, to shield it from the elements and vibration, so that the lung itself medically is not going to really experience anything different.
We then proceeded with that drone flight with the organ on board and was rolled into the OR where it was transplanted.
Well, welcome again. My name is Eric Lefebvre. I'm Director of Business Development at the National Research Council for the Aerospace Research Center, and I'm happy to host you today. We have an exciting panel of experts that will be here today to talk about advanced air mobility. Just a quick thing, we're going to be doing the panel discussion for about 45 minutes, and we'll leave about 30 minutes for some discussions as well. So hopefully we'll have a good set of questions to review and discuss, and we'll keep it very dynamic and interactive. So to the panel, the exciting panel that we have today. So first off, we have Amit Sorin. So he's the General Manager of Global Drone Strategy Cargo at Air Canada Cargo. We're also joined by Tierra Fraser, who's the founder and lead executive at Esprayer. We also have Simon Azar, who is the VP of Strategy, Marketing, and Digital Products and Adjacencies Civil Aviation at CAE. And last but not least, we have Linda Shukroff, who is the Director of Innovation at Vancouver International Airport, or also well known as YVR. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us on this panel today. AAM is a really new and exciting. It's perhaps not fully well understood in terms of its implications, certainly in terms of the benefits to society and the environment, and moving to a net zero environment, connecting communities and people from coast to coast to coast. So at the NRC, we've been involved in AAM for some time, and myself specifically. And so we've taken a keen interest, and we opted to create a larger group called the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortia a couple of years ago. And all the panelists here are part of that group. And the idea was really to unify a roadmap, a strategy on everything from regulation, environmental benefits, societal benefits, and so on, and look at foundational building blocks to implement AAM successfully in Canada. And today, CAM has, I think, over 80 plus members, and there's a number of projects ongoing everywhere, and it's only the beginning. There's a whole lot more to be done as we go forward. So we'll be talking about all the various aspects of AAM. There's challenges, there's benefits, there's a number of things that we need to solve, obviously, and the panelists here today provide some excellent feedback on each one of these questions that we have. So, but before I go there, I'd like to ask the panel to introduce themselves, what's their interest in AAM, and some quick background before we get into the questions. So I'll start with you, Tierra.
Sure, great. Thank you, Chauncey Kiwao. Hello to all of you. As mentioned, I'm Tierra Fraser. I'm a proud Métis woman, and joining you today from the beautiful lands of the Musqueam people here at YVR. And I'm the founder of Esqueo Air, and we are super excited to be a founding member of CAM, the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium. And we see ourselves, we're a small 703 operator based in YVR, and we see ourselves as the bridge between traditional air transportation and the sustainable technology of the future. So we are super excited about advanced air mobility, and so delighted to be part of the conversation. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Tierra. We're certainly excited to have you here today with us, so thank you again. Next, I will go to Linda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Shukroft. As Eric mentioned, I too am located the same location as Tierra, so the nation of the Musqueam people, the lands of the Musqueam people. I'm pleased to be here today. So for those who are not from Canada, maybe in our audience, YVR is the second largest airport in Canada. We're located in the west coast of British Columbia. And my role at YVR as being the Director of Innovation is my responsibility is to continually look at emerging trends that may affect our aviation industry as a whole. So I work really closely with our land development team and our cargo teams, and we stay on top of all the trends with AAM. So pleased to be here to share our opinion through an airport operator perspective.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Again, thank you as well for being here. It's exciting to have your point of view as well from an airport perspective. Next, we go to Simon.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Simon Azar. I'm based on the other side of the country. I'm based out of Montreal with a company called CAE. So CAE specializes essentially, or is known for, I'd say, flight simulators and aviation personnel training in the civil, defense, and on the healthcare side. So we're doing mostly flight simulators. We train about a third of the world's pilots. And we also have a lot of software on flight operations that supports airlines. I myself lead marketing and strategy for the civil segment, as well as adjacencies. And adjacencies are essentially things outside of our core training business that are of interest for CAE. And so in 2019, 2020, we started to take an active interest in advanced air mobility. And today it's one of our biggest adjacencies. In fact, it's becoming core business for us. And so we've grown the team and started to look into it and lean into it since about 2020. So that's it. And I'm very eager to share the perspective from a training company and be on this panel. So thank you.
Thank you, Simon. It's really exciting to see CAE in this space as well. I think there's tremendous value that's being brought by CAE for sure. And least but not least, Amit, over to you.
Thanks, Eric. Good day, everyone. Hope everyone joining from all over the world. My name is Amit Serene, as Eric mentioned. I'm with Air Canada. Air Canada, for those of who you may not know, is the largest commercial airline in Canada. We are also one of the more innovative airlines we consider ourselves to be. We have a number of initiatives in the advanced air mobility sector, and I would be happy to talk about more in the coming discussion that we have. I personally manage the cargo drone strategy team. It's a global team, and we have a number of hats that we wear. We obviously resell for one of the drone technology partners here in Canada. We also have a deep interest in integrating drones in our own business. And third, but not the least, we are big advocates of the industry. We're also on the national board of CAM. So very pleased to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you. And having Air Canada here on board is great, and certainly with your recent acquisition of hybrid electric aircraft, a very leading edge. So that's awesome. All right, let's get going because we're all here to hear more about AAM. So I'll be interacting with the panel. We're going to talk a bit about the benefits that AAM will have for Canada and its ecosystem. We're looking at things like moving cargo, obviously goods, medical. Ultimately, we want to move people too. Access to different communities, and certainly looking at a net zero type of transport as well. So I'll go to the panel to talk about what these benefits translate for them and sort of get some feedback. And Amit, I'm going to go straight back to you and see how you view all this, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. You know what? The benefits of AAM to us are quite large. Given Canada's large landscape and how spread out the population is, AAM offers a great solution to the Canadian population, be it on the drone side, or be it on electric aircraft, or any other means of advanced air mobility. During the pandemic, it was a true test of what cargo drones can offer. We had a number of projects that came to fruition during the pandemic, where we were able to deliver much needed PPE and other medical goods to isolated communities. We did a number of projects in Ontario. We have a couple of projects going on across the nation as well when it comes to remote communities. So I think, just in general, the AAM has a big ability to have a major impact on the economy and the society, I would say. And there's just so much. We're just getting started on AAM. And there's obviously from a Canada perspective, we look at monitoring our carbon footprint. We have made some public announcements on electric aircraft. We're already supporting the advancements of cargo drones. All these line up with our sustainability goals and leading to net zero in the future.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Tons of benefits, and certainly being able to reach the cargo space is massive, as we've seen through the pandemic. People are ordering straight to the house. So I think there's going to be a lot of requirements moving down that path. So that's from one operator. And I want to go to the other operator here too, service provider as well, at Tierra, from your standpoint as well. Tremendous opportunities across the board.
Absolutely. And I see those opportunities in a number of different areas. And there are so many benefits. I'm not going to be able to get to them all in this short question, but I'm sure we'll touch on each of them. The first, of course, is sustainability. How, as an operator, I need to reconcile the impacts that we're having on Mother Earth, and how do we be mindfully and consciously be shifting our entire industry in whatever technology is emerging to be able to have us be walking more softly on Mother Earth. There's pretty much nothing that is more important than that, and is one of the reasons why I'm excited about being a part of this ecosystem that is truly working together, because in order for us to see those outcomes, those lower emission outcomes, we really do have to work together. I think there is opportunity in accessibility, just as we talked about being able to access harder to reach areas with lower costs. I also think that there is a really interesting opportunity. This is, a massive game changer in our industry. And we are creating it together. We're creating it right now in this conversation. And as we co-create something new together, we have the opportunity to leave behind the systems that weren't working for us. We have the opportunity to create more equitable systems and be able to bring everyone into this technology of the future. So a focus on equity is important to me, and as it is to Cam. And I also think there is lots of opportunities here to uplift Indigenous peoples and communities. Esqueo Air has been working on a year-long project to explore how do we bring Indigenous knowledges together with these emerging technologies in a way that's going to uplift Indigenous peoples and communities. And there are incredible benefits there and many more, but we'll get to those. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And so lots to unpack there. You mentioned a lot of key things. And I think AAM is going to play a huge role in helping overall aviation advance towards a net zero. Obviously, it's easier to have a full electric eVTOL than a 777, obviously. But I think we need to have those stepping stones, and hydrogen as well as making some major inroads. But the thing I want to come back to eventually as well, we'll come back to it, is the concept of accessibility for all as well, and equity. I think these are key components of AAM that needs to be highlighted. So thank you for that. Next, I will go over to you, Simon, and from your perspective, and obviously you're a big OEM in simulations, and eVTOLs, as you say, has become a big part, or AAM has become a big part of what's going on at CAE. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, we're leaning in, and I look forward to talking a bit about what it means specifically for CAE in a minute. But I guess to answer the question around benefits for Canada and opportunities for Canada, I agree with what's been said fully. I think a different angle at it, and a huge opportunity for Canada, is around our this is a new industry that's being created. It's a new evolution of aerospace. And today, Canada is the 5th aerospace exporter in the world. So I think we're at a junction where we can really position ourselves, really lean in as a country to position ourselves better for the future for this new industry, which without a doubt will gain, will be big because of the pain points that it's trying to solve, because of the sustainability challenges and so on. So we have a lot of talent. We have a lot of universities that are producing, very strong engineers, a lot of experience in the different companies. And that's something that's hard to recreate outside. And we have a lot of OEMs on the aircraft side who are already establishing themselves in Canada or establishing research facilities here. We have Beta, we have Jaunt, we have Whisk, and so on. So I think, we have an opportunity to create high value jobs, to continue the heritage of aerospace and aviation that Canada's carried on for many, many decades already. And I think that would have, a different but also important benefit for Canada going forward in the AAM space, to take a leadership position in that space.
Yeah, well said. And of course, being a 5 overall, but being number 1 in simulation, thanks to CAE as well. And the role that you'll bring also in terms of a single synthetic environment, or so digital twinning. We start twinning the country and airports and air routes and things like that. Those going to be it's going to be an important part of how we get there, and certainly how we deal with airports. And speaking of airports, over to you, Linda, because the airports are going to be playing an important role into this. I mean, we need to make sure that the airports are ready to accept these aircrafts that are coming down the path pretty fast as well. And of course, YVR is going to be playing a key role, and it's been very innovative and green and in general as well. So what does that mean for YVR?
Yeah, so I think YVR, like any airport in the world, we have really, really ambitious 2030, even net zero goals that we personally have at our own airport. But I know in the next, 10 to 20 years, all of the aviation industry is coming together to have zero emission, right? So this is a really key driver, I think, in us working with aircraft carriers like, the airlines that are here on this panel today to figure out what their plans are for aircrafts. And I think from an airport operator's perspective, like the obvious use cases that we think are the most beneficial for something like this are the ones that are active right now. So use cases for medical equipment and cargo. Cargo was a huge problem during the pandemic for our airport. We had trucks idling around, and if we were able to somehow in a green way get drones to get all these the cargo into a centralized location without using our roads and clogging our air infrastructure up, that would have been great. So I think there's lots at play there, but I think the one thing that we're looking forward that we'll bring up is actually when it comes down to moving people, right? So airport operators traditionally require a lot of land, a lot of space for taking off and for landing. So the real opportunity, but it comes with challenges as well, is looking at how do we process people through the vertical landing and takeoff model, right? So once that actually comes, which is a little bit far down the line, because I think we have to, get the technology and the regulations and the cargo and the medical equipment use cases correct first. But once we start looking at the transport of people, I think that's very challenging because our infrastructure right now, the way it's set up, it's not set up to do that. So we are looking actively at using things like our parkades and the technology around there. But I think there's a lot of planning and a lot of unknowns right now. And of course, with people and cargo is no different, but people is a little bit more challenging, is how do you do that safely and securely without adding the bottlenecks and the bureaucracy? Because part of this is let's process everything quickly and efficiently and in a green way. So then when you're adding people and you're adding safety requirements and stuff, I think that could slow down things a little bit. So I think we have to be thinking through all of that in this ecosystem as we're moving these use cases further in advance. And Eric, you mentioned the digital twin. So for a lot of people that don't know, YVR is one of the first airports in the world to launch our digital twin. So we used the pandemic as some downtime. And if you're not familiar with what a digital twin is, it's essentially a virtual replica of our airport on Sea Island. So everything from our terminal and our airspace is done in both a 2D and 3D model. And one of the use cases that will come into play in the future with our digital twin platform is, of course, what you mentioned, is figuring out, we can actually use real simulation to figure out how planes, manless drones even, can land and take off and coexist with our current airport operations right now, right? So that's going to be key, I think. So we're already kind of prepared for that with the launch of our digital twin.
Great, thanks. And you said a lot of things as well there that we'll need lots of goodies to talk about. Then we'll get into it in the next little bit here. But certainly the airports are critical, and creating a network of airports across the country, make sure that we all have the building blocks. But certainly you've been leading edge, and it's been great to have you as part of CAM as well. Okay, so maybe talk a little bit more about the initiatives, because I think when we talk about the higher level benefits, I'm going to turn back to you, Simon, because there's a lot of things that's happening, of course, at CAE in terms of some of the initiatives we talked about, simulation and digital twins and that whole environment. But maybe talk about your organization and some of the things you're looking at to do to support AAM, its growth and its implementation in Canada.
Yeah, sure. So, the first thing that we've done is become carbon neutral. So CAE as an organization is carbon neutral now. Most of it, or a lot of it, is still carbon offsets, but we're also looking at how do we reduce our carbon footprint. And one of the biggest initiatives that we have ongoing there is around the electrification of our fleet. So we have just around a little over 150 aircraft that we use to train pilots. And we're looking at electrifying, and we're partnering with Piper. One of the biggest components of our fleet is the Archer. So we're building an STC, a supplemental type certificate, to modify our existing fleet to have it become electric and reduce our carbon footprint. Now, more geared towards the advanced air mobility, the external advanced air mobility, passenger and cargo carrying, we're engaged with a lot of OEMs at the moment to see how we can support them across the full, I would say, line of services that we offer existing OEMs, airlines, and operators. So it's very much centered around training. That is our core and our heritage. We started working on the development of new simulation devices that'll bring down the economic footprint of the training. You know, the big simulators that you see for aircraft like 777s and 320s and so on can be cumbersome, can be expensive rather for the economics that we're looking at here. So we're looking a lot at mixed reality, virtual reality to try to keep the pilot training and even enhance the pilot training for these specific types of operations, but while reducing the economic footprint. And we're looking at using simulation for other means. So we spoke about digital twins. This is something that CAE has been doing. Essentially, pilots train in digital twins of the world. That's what the simulation is. Now we're looking at bringing it to landscapes, to cities, so that city planners can better plan on where would a vertiport make the most sense, where would it be less disruptive to neighborhoods, to schools, and so on and so forth. And we've seen quite a strong pull from that segment because of the unknown, because of the social acceptability. And I definitely commend Vancouver Airport, Linda, on seeing that early and leaning into it, because I agree. I think it's a game changer in terms of acceptability and in terms of planning, to be able to see that simulated before making big capital decisions and so on. And then, of course, we're looking at we're also looking at supporting some of these OEMs on the pilot training itself. So using our training network, globally, we have around 65 locations around the world where we today train pilots, train technicians. So how can we leverage that global footprint? Big cities that are being targeted, Singapore, Tokyo, Dubai. These are all cities where we already have established training centers. So how can we leverage that infrastructure to help train up the future generation of pilots that are going to be flying these vehicles? So that gives a bit of an idea. We're definitely heavily invested. We have $1 billion earmarked to green technologies and to and advanced air mobility and digital transformation. And so we're definitely leaning in, and we want to have a big impact. And we believe in this market, and we want to be very present there from an early day.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Well said. I mean, CAE is going to play a big role in this in multi ways as well. And I was just thinking about simulation, and there's the whole concept of pilots or assisted piloting to optional pilots to autonomy ultimately as well. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in that. We're going to maybe talk a bit more about that in a little bit. Thanks for that. I want to go to Tiara as well, a little bit on this as well, in terms of, from your perspective as well, in terms of initiatives. You mentioned a number of activities that you're involved in, and maybe go into a little bit of details on some of those exciting initiatives you're involved in.
Great, happy to. I think we'll start with equity, because I think I'm often seen as an equity advocate in our industry. And I often get invited onto the equity panels. And like I said, there's a real opportunity here in how we design together this new and emerging industry. And how do we engage folks that have been historically, colonially, and intentionally excluded from this industry? And how do we make this a place where people want to be, where people feel a sense of belonging? And so centering that in everything that we do. And I mean, that's pretty much a part of every conversation I have. Esqueo Air is, a marketing 101 failure, in that you don't name anything, a company, a name that people can't pronounce, right? We learned that way back in the basics. But it's a literal act of reclamation of womanhood. Esqueo is a Cree word for woman. So reclamation of womanhood, reclamation of matriarchal leadership that I think we really desperately need more of in our world, and reclamation of language. And so, myself and Esqueo Air is always engaged in that conversation, because we see that we can build an industry that is more equitable, and we have to keep centered on that. But it's also so much more than that. We want to be involved in all of the innovations in so many different areas. We are carbon neutral, of course, ourselves. We have partnered under an MOU with YVR to intentionally work together for initiatives that have us walking more softly on Mother Earth, and to innovate together alongside all of our partners with CAM. You know, we're interested, we're a small operator, so we have the ability to be nimble, to be adaptable, to try new things. You know, we may look at some adaptations in our existing or coming aircraft. We're looking at when it comes to, again, being a small company, we are excited about being involved in some use cases of airspace integration and exploring lots of different ways that we can be part of that. Looking at hub and spoke models for cargo. So, you know, bringing goods to, you know, a certain destination and deploying the drones from there, especially into difficult to reach communities. And of course, that brings me back into the work that we're doing around bringing together. Indigenous peoples have so much wisdom to offer us about how to be in the world, how to be in relationship with Mother Earth, how to be mindful about how we give more than we take. And so really bringing those Indigenous knowledges together with these emerging technologies. And like I said, I'm interested in how can these technologies specifically benefit Indigenous peoples and communities, because, you know, when we, I hope that our country and all the folks that are involved in co-creating this new industry, or really integrating and developing through an industry that already exists, that we care about reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and we center that in our activities. So certainly myself and Esqueo Air are helping with that. And then we're really interested also in the training aspect, and, you know, connecting with Simon and his folks to see, you know, how at the training level then, how can we get more women, more folks across the gender spectrum, more Indigenous peoples, people of color? How do we really engage folks in the training aspect and beyond, and create culturally relevant training for folks? And yeah, also interested, we have our own AMO, interested in how we, you know, we'd like to fly them, we'd like to fix them. And yeah, those are just a few of the things. Thank you.
Yeah, no, your work in AM has been tremendous, and definitely commend me. There's a lot of work to be done, and you're tackling a lot of it. There's still tons of work to be done, and certainly we all look at this as, you know, obviously there's always a two-way street when we look at accessibility and connecting with the northern communities as well. There's a give and take both ways, and there's lots that we can learn, and I think there's that's what we want to have, is that two-way flow of information exchange, and how we get this to certainly impact the environment, but also develop the communities that is essential for them in the way they want to see it as well. So there's a lot of projects I know with Canada are starting to develop with that in mind as well, and you're playing a key role in that. So thanks again, Tiara. Over to you, Amit, to some of your thoughts on terms of Air Canada. You guys involve a lot of things across the country. I'm not going to say any more because I know a lot, but go ahead and give us some highlights.
Yeah, certainly, Eric. And you know what, I think some of what Tiara has said, you know, it's also something that Air Canada is also focused on. So a lot has been said, and well said, Tiara. So, you know, just from an Air Canada, I'll try to provide some highlights from an Air Canada passenger perspective and cargo perspective. Let's start with the passenger side. So, you know, already Air Canada is supporting the development of new technologies such as sustainable aviation fuels, carbon capture to address climate change, right? So back in September of this year, you know, Air Canada, you know, announced the order of buying the Hot Aerospace ES-30 electric regional aircraft. that's going to serve regional and commuter routes more sustainably, provide low emission connectivity to local communities. And everybody here is represented on the panel as well as an industry. We all need to work together to make it happen, right? To be it a success. Although the aircrafts are coming in a few years down the line, but there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and I think which has been talked about from a few different perspectives by my fellow panelists here. And then speaking from a cargo drone perspective, which is where I'm focused on, we've been in existence. This group has been in existence for the last 3 years. Right. So when we got involved in the early days, we obviously the industry was much less developed than it is today. The regulations were less developed, but we knew that getting to the cargo drone space was a natural extension of our cargo business, being the largest airline carrier serving communities and also serving so many destinations. We will look at so many different ways to integrate cargo drones in our own business to see where it makes most sense, has the most impact on the cargo routes that we want to establish. And a lot of those routes are remote, they are into communities, and so it has so many different impacts that we look at it for, also from an economic standpoint, social standpoint, making an impact on Canadians where they live and so on. In our role as resellers of a Canadian company by the name of Drone Delivery Canada, we actually have done a lot of matchmaking. We have brought forward a lot of different customers to DDC in a variety of different verticals that have proven that cargo drones can have a meaningful impact in our business. It's a scalable model. Obviously, there's a lot of dependencies externally to make this move to to the next stage. But over the last 3 years, we've been able to prove that drones can serve communities. We've served isolated Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario, in Vancouver. We have the world's first airport deployment at Edmonton International Airport. Right, so that's been a huge win for the Canadian market here, for everybody that's been involved. So integrating cargo drones at one of the major airports in the country, and it's not a proof of concept; it's a live commercial route. Right, it's supported by industry. There's a financial model, a business model that works around it. So that's been a huge win, right? And it puts Canada right up front. And center, there's a lot of traction globally from other airports as well to understand what Air Canada and what Canada has done on the RPAS side to grow this industry forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and it's nice to see the leadership role that Air Canada has, and we need that, of course. And all four of you here, I think, are a tremendous example of that. And we see some pictures there on the screen of some initiatives taking place. But of course, all these aircrafts, they have to land somewhere. And that brings me back to YVR, because the car industry had a lot of electric cars initially, or at least and then very little charging stations. So it's been problematic. So we need to make sure that the logistics infrastructures are in play as well. And Linda, I know that in your last comments you mentioned a lot of things about what's happening with YVR, but maybe select one or so initiative. And then after that, I want to get into the challenges as well, because I think it's important that we spend some time on that front. And so we'll come back to that. But some initiatives at YVR from you, Linda.
Yeah, so I think, I had talked about, obviously, there's longer term strategic initiatives that we'll always be looking at in the next few years to support this initiative and to support our carriers and people and cargo, which has to do with our infrastructure and land use and looking at our parkades and how do we do things differently. But I think some of the more tangible things, I'll talk about two that we're working on just for the interest of time. So one is, as to your point, is looking at our charging infrastructure, right? How it's set up now, how do we want it to be set up? How does it work? And not just with air carriers that need to gain electricity for their aircrafts in the future, but also our ground fleet, right? So we have a lot of ground fleet, baggage carts and things like that. How does that all come to play, and a business model around there? And the other thing that we're actively involved with is And again, I think it's engagement. So bringing the government along to a lot of these conversations, because we're highly regulated, as you all can imagine, an airport is. And so I think having Transport Canada, you know, a part of pilots and proof of concepts and trials that we can all learn from how do we, again, operate drones and manless aircrafts and coexist with our traditional way of, you know, landing and taking off and things like that that's happening right now. So one of the initiatives that we're going to be joining very shortly is something that's been led by the University of British Columbia, UBC, and they're working with Rogers and Canada Post and a few big players, and including us now, where we're trialing, you know, the technology even around the 5G network and how do you move cargo safely with an unmanned drone. So I think, you know, bringing the government along for something that's tangible like that proof of concept is going to be key to drive the longer term vision and some of these longer initiatives that we're talking about.
That's great. Thanks, Linda. And that is so critical. And so I want to move into the challenges, because obviously we've talked a lot about the benefits. I think we all see it, but there's a lot of there's a lot of things that we must overcome as a group. And so I want to talk now with each one of you, and maybe I'll pick on the service providers. So Amit and TR maybe a comment, but there's a lot of issues today. There's environmental issues, there's social considerations. You know, will people accept this type of mode of transport? There's regulatory, obviously, challenges, technology. Then we had how do we deal with the urban areas? How, you know, and versus the rural areas are a bit maybe easier, but still there's tremendous challenges out there. So maybe to you, TR, I'd like to hear from your perspective. Obviously, you know, you have an airline that you're flying. You know, AAM brings a bunch of new massive question marks that we need to overcome, and as a group we will. I'm sure, I have no doubt that we will over the next several years. But we need to pick them one by one and make sure we address them effectively. So over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, often the opportunity is equal to the challenge, right? And so this is a really, really big opportunity, and with that comes really big challenges. And so public acceptance, certainly, most people don't even know what you're talking about when you say advanced air mobility. Like almost everyone is. And even if you use the language that us in the advanced air mobility world don't like to use, like, okay, just imagine the Jetsons and, you know, like still people do not even have a familiarity. Like we talk about public acceptance. We can't possibly get to public acceptance when people don't even know what this technology is, can't even envision what it is. And, you know, to most folks, it seems like something so far in the future that folks have difficulty, you know, even making a connection with it. We have the challenges with battery infrastructure, and even bigger than that, then if we have the battery infrastructure, where does, you know, the energy come from beyond that? And it's tricky when this is going to take a whole ecosystem. And we know that when we work together with partners, things take longer. We get a better outcome, but things take longer. And, you know, from a regulatory perspective, you know, that is definitely a challenge. The technology's there. It's here already. It's ready to go. It's everything around the technology that we need to, you know, develop and the foundations of. And so those are just a few. There's many more, but interested to hear from my friends here around what they're seeing.
Yeah, so just on the Jetsons part, I think it's important that we address that we're not going to be walking around with these tinfoil hats in order to connect to these flying machines. But
100%.
Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I was just going to add, just to Tiara's point, I mean, we have all of these players that need to come together. So I think the biggest challenge is government, airports, air carriers, OEMs, our academic institutions, right, to create programs and train all the talent that we'll need in the future. So I think all of us coming together is at the same time, at the right time, is going to be very interesting and of course necessary for the success of this. And I think that's going to be, and it has already proven to be a challenge, right?
Yeah, so and that's why I think, you know, something like CAM is very helpful to bring everybody together, to have a single conversation, a single approach to all this. I made from your, and I'm going to do an assignment to you as well as an enabler of all this as well from a technology standpoint, but I made from your standpoint, Air Canada as well, obviously regulation is a big issue, obviously environment too, there's a social context. I think the technology is there to Tiara's point. What do you see as the key challenge for you guys?
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot has already been said, which are all valid points. You know, I'm of the view that, you know, each of these have their own space, right? You know, the environment, social acceptance, technology, where we can fly, where we cannot fly, and the regulator, of course, right? And as Linda said, we all need to come together. We all have to move together as an industry. We can't do anything in isolation. What I can say, just to add on, is, you know, over the last few years, you know, being an actual potential user and a reseller of technology, drone technology, I can say from a business standpoint, the need is there, right? We have been able to quantify what the need is across the nation, right? And the businesses will support, right? But the key, if I had to really pick one, is going to be the regulator, right? From our perspective, you know, again, I'm not discounting any other, sides of the challenges that the industry has, but I think the regulator definitely holds the key to success here. I know there's a lot of work being done by TC and everybody else involved, and we are very supportive of it. But I think that is definitely one area that can, once it unlocks, with the new regs coming out and advancements happen, I think the industry will definitely support, and it's going to grow exponentially.
Yeah, that's well said. And of course, I just want to make sure we acknowledge that, both at TC and NAFCAN are heavily engaged in the discussion. All of us here, I think, are talking about one form or another, and through CAN and other initiatives. So I think they're part of the team as well and part of the solution to all this. But Simon, on the technology side, I mean, yes, we have lots of technology today, but still we need to enable those technologies as well, make sure that are level, that are high enough that there's confidence in the technology and so forth. So we talked about digital, we talked about simulation, we have to train pilots, we have to do a number of things, obstacles from your standpoint at CAE.
Well, look, I think in terms of technology, these aircraft are going to be certified to the highest standards, right? The same standards that we see elsewhere. So to me, and I think we're going to get there, whether it's going to be 6 months later or a year later, but I'm confident that we're going to get there. The OEMs that we're engaged with are very confident and give us every confidence that we're going to get there. So I think that's probably, from my perspective, and I'm not underplaying that challenge. It's challenging to certify an aircraft, but I think that's under control, so to speak. Yeah. The challenges are going to be from the integration in the ecosystem. And just to build off what Tiara said earlier, I have the data in front of me. NASA conducted a survey with 1,500 people in Ohio and Los Angeles. 75% of them didn't know what we were talking about when we spoke about AAM, urban air mobility, or any of that. And then 20% of them said they would do it. They would fly in an electric aircraft. And the reality is, it's going to be a step-by-step approach. I think the Jetsons is one thing, but an electric helicopter is something else. And there are steps for us to get from where we are to where we eventually want to be, where you hail an Uber and it's flying. I think something that's not spoken about very, very much is labor and pilots in particular. Today, we're in a situation where we have a pilot shortage. There's a big demand for pilots. CAE is obviously, as a producer of pilots, very involved there. And we're working a lot to bring the other 50% into the flight deck. Today, 5% of pilots are women, which makes no sense at all. And I think we're going to have an opportunity with advanced air mobility, because a lot of the biases that exist today with pilots in commercial business aviation don't exist yet with advanced air mobility. And this is something that is definitely going to be an opportunity for us to balance out the profession and have a balance between women and men. Now, if we look at a study that McKinsey did in 2019, they had expected 60,000 pilots to be required for advanced air mobility in the next 10 years. Even if 60,000 is a bit big, even if we shift the 60,000 for 10 years from now, even if it's 50 or 40,000, just to put that in perspective, it's the amount of pilots that we have today in business aviation. So it's a very large amount of crews that are going to be needed. And so that's going to be a challenge without a doubt. And we need to start tackling it now by building the right training curriculums, by, raising awareness that this is a career that will become available, and hopefully, and we believe that it's possible to make it as part of the career path of an airline pilot or a business jet pilot. In other words, it's a place where you can gain hours. It's a place where, if you've just had a child and you want to come home every night, you can work for a few years. And that's something that we propose to women and young fathers as well. Come be an instructor with us for a few years, and then you'll go back to Air Canada or to your employer. So it's a challenge. I think it can be resolved, and in fact, it can even lead to an opportunity to help us be more effective in managing the pilot demand and the shortage in the next 2 decades.
Yeah, fully agreed. And you transitioned us very nicely from challenges to some of the requirements to implement this. I want to talk about this a bit more because I think, the challenges are there. So we talked about those, but how do we solve those and requirements for that? So you talk about skills development. We need to get people involved and students at the earliest age as possible. So we really want to look at use cases and demonstration projects that are a viable business. Obviously, we want to look at skills development. We want public outreaches. Those are the 3 big pieces. Maybe infrastructure. Obviously, we need vertiports because we can use airports as well, but there's also going to be a need to connect directly to the cities moving forward. So as we transition to that a little bit, maybe Tiara, to you on some of the requirements. I know we've touched on this a little bit, but there's a lot to consider to make this happen, to implement AAM in Canada.
I'll focus on a couple of things because I think my friends will probably focus on some of the others, so I'll leave those. But I think, again, how the importance of coming together as a community. And that's going to be challenging as we kind of move beyond the research or use case into, revenue generating. And, how do we still continue to be working together as a community? I think that is absolutely key. And we have strength in numbers. So, just kind of locking arms together and moving this ahead is the key. And I think to be a world leader, I think we have every opportunity. We are leading. Canada is leading in this space, and we must not fall behind, right? We have to keep innovating and keep moving things ahead. The challenge is that aviation is slow. Now, what I saw in the pandemic was creativity and adaptability like we have never seen before. And I think what that's done is really unlock opportunities in our industry to not do things the way we've always done them. We can be innovative, we can be creative and still be safe. And, from my perspective, one of the things that I'll touch on, biased as an entrepreneur, but when it comes to the reconciliation piece, it's my belief that co-creating the conditions for Indigenous businesses to thrive is the single most natural, swift, and effective pathway to economic reconciliation in our country. So not only how are we engaging Indigenous folks, how are we uplifting those communities, how are we using this technology to benefit and better Indigenous communities, but also how are we moving the nutrients to where they need to go to have Indigenous businesses thrive in this new space. And then that's the other thing that I'll speak of is the nutrients, is the funding. How do we get the resources, the nutrients that we need to keep researching, to keep advancing, to keep lifting these emerging technology businesses to be able to keep moving. That's how we'll be a global leader, is moving the nutrients to where they need to go to keep the advancements coming.
Yeah, that's well captured. And if we have time, we'll talk about funding a little bit, but I'm curious to hear from you, Linda, as well, from a YVR standpoint, with the requirements or just overall as well, because I think it touches on a number of points. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Tiara touched on a lot of points. For us, a lot of it too is a bit of wait and see. So there's obviously planning we can do, but in terms of how ready are the air carriers, how ready is our government to allow us to operate in this way, and a lot of learning right now, right? So I think I'll just keep it short because I think we're running out of time, but from our perspective, I think
4 minutes, so yeah.
Tiara covered up a lot.
A couple more, yeah. Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that. And I guess over to you, Amit, for some comments on the requirements. I think we still have 4 minutes, so go ahead and and give us some thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely keep it brief. So, we look at the industry taking a crawl, walk, run approach. I think, we're kind of coming out of the crawl stage and going to the walk stage. But, regardless of what stage you are, one to the other, I think there's lots happening in the industry to support the movement and the advancement in the industry. And, we've talked a lot about it. What we often struggle is to get access to quality information, right? So I personally feel that, to get Canada moving on a global scale and for us, all of us to progress at the same pace, we need access to quality information at a rapid pace. Obviously, we're not looking for anything that's proprietary. We just want information that we can share, we can learn of each other, we can feed off each other. I think that's going to be critical to bring everything together, right? CAM is a great example, perhaps, of where this information could reside, or maybe it can act as a body to consolidate everything under one shelf. We often spend so much time, if there's a particular topic that I'm looking to learn about, I have to probably spend hours and hours and go to, through tons of information. If that is available through a consolidated method, pre-qualified, and the quality was there, I think that would really help us advance a lot of these.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And over to you, Simon, you talked about skill development. Obviously, that's a key aspect, but there's a number of requirements that we need here as well. So from your perspective.
Well, I think from a high level, what we need to be a leader and to be successful is alignment. There's a number of different components that need to happen for this to become scalable, and certainly for us to assert leadership, and they all need to happen. And so, I think it's going to be up to the leadership, the ecosystem orchestrators to really create that alignment. And there's one example that I like very much, and I think is a good example, is what Paris has done with a project called Choose Paris Region with Airports of Paris, RATP, which operates their ground transportation, and a number of other ministries. EASA is involved. There's about 30 partners. Air France is involved, Airbus is involved, CAE is involved. And what they've basically done is who needs to be doing what to be able to bring us forward, and what is a specific timeline. And the timeline in this case is the Paris Olympics. Right. So they want to be carrying aircraft, and Volocopter is the OEM that's participating. So Volocopter will be carrying passengers at the Paris Olympics in 2024. Yeah. Everybody who's on there needs to step up to make that happen. And that means EASA, who's on there, the Ministry of Transportation is on there, Airports of Paris is on there, RATP, so on and so forth. Trained pilots need to be there. CAE, yeah, we got it. And I think that alignment, if we're able to reproduce it, can be very powerful and can really move it.
That's a great point, and I think that's what we aim to do through CAM as well. There's a lot of activities from north, west, east, and so forth, and different use cases that are viable, outcome, and so forth. But I'd love to talk about this so much more. I wish we had a 2-hour session, because I think we could go on for quite some time, because it's such an amazing topic. As you're all very passionate about this as well. But maybe what I'll do is put a halt on this one here, and maybe provide some time for the folks that are taking the time to listen to us today, to see if there's any questions they'd like to ask the panel, or maybe ask the question and I can direct the panelists to answer. So I'll turn it over. Tiana, I know you're there in the background. We never introduced you, but thank you for your help. Tiana Harper's there helping us too in the background with this. So if there are any questions, bring them forward, please. We'd love to hear from you.
Very much to the panelists today. It's been a great discussion. Let's kick off the Q&A section now. So I do encourage any of the audience members today to post their question in the chat box, so we can get to them, but also have record of them, so we can continue to address necessary concerns from the audience. First question I did receive personally through the inbox was, how can industry and participants today support the implementation of AAM?
That's a good question. It's still, any takers from the panel on this?
Tell all your friends. Tell everyone you know about the exciting world of advanced air mobility.
Social media. Yeah. No, definitely. Any other comments?
I think it's companies need to put the resources behind the ideas that they want to see succeed. It's easy to have strategies and ideas, but I think industry will need to resource it correctly for us to be able to see it move forward.
Yeah, I think for each of the major players in the ecosystem, each company needs to really have like an SME that's really willing and interested to keep on top of all of this and participate, right? So I think that's going to be key as well, because it's easy enough for some of the players in the ecosystem to know that this is really far ahead. It's 5 years, it's 6 years. Everyone's struggling for resources right now. We don't really have the time to put to this, but I think having people that are dedicated to look into this and actively participate and create that engagement, I think is going to be of value.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I mean, if you look at it, and maybe I'm not sure, Tiana, I'm going to jump on a question to the panel, but like you talked about implementation, Linda, and so when will this take place? When will we see eVTOLs taken off, with cargo and maybe on a second with people, or we're not waiting for the Jetsons to take place, right? So is this 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What's the panel?
Well, I think for pilots and for proof of concepts for drones moving cargo around, my guess is maybe in 2 years. People, that's a little bit different. I think that for people, we're probably still about 5, 6, 7 years out.
I'll jump in, Linda, because I have a differing.
Feel free to disagree, Simon.
Well, if we're successful with Paris, we'll see passengers at the 2024 Olympics. And again, I think there's an alignment with all the stakeholders. Let's make this happen. It's challenging, but it's in a controlled-ish environment. So if we look at our first 2 live training operations, it's 2024. One in Asia and this specific one in Paris. So
my caveat is for Canada, though. So.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's a good point, though. Amit, any comments?
Agreed for the rest of the world.
I'll just add from a cargo drone perspective, it's already happening today, right? We have moved beyond from point of concept as proof of concept to commercialization. There are several routes being flown as we speak right now, across the country that are carrying commercial cargo. So that's, it's sort of, for us, cargo is kind of leading the pathway to the advanced air mobility from a passenger standpoint. So it's already happening. So we're very excited. Obviously, we are, we have a roadmap that we think we are on a great trajectory to follow, starting with cargo drones, moving to electrification, and then who knows what the future is going to entail for us.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess to that too, I think to what the point Simon was making, I think this will be looking here in Canada too, is we're not going to be seeing these air taxis all over the place. What we're looking at is developing corridors, right? So maybe a corridor between a place, in Vancouver going to over the water to IDR, for example, and the same thing maybe in the Toronto region as well, or Montreal, using the St. Lawrence as a travel route, or using Lake Ontario around the Toronto region to connect some places. So I think, there's ways to move this ahead. I think the technology is there. We should get the regulators, and to your point, Simon, get really on the same page. Tiana, back to you. Are you seeing some further questions for the group?
Yeah, so another question for the panel here. I believe it was Amit, you had mentioned this, but can you add some more description around the crawl, walk, run that you mentioned?
Yeah, so in essence, for time, I'll just keep it simple. So basically, we are sort of, evolving, right? So we kind of giving birth to a new industry. So we kind of, in a very crawl phase, the regulations are developed to a certain extent. We are complying by it, but there is obviously a bigger need to evolve the existing regs and the existing permits that we have to fly cargo drones. There's lots more we can do, right? So once we pass the crawl phase, we obviously have to work very closely with the industry and the government, right, from TC and Afghan perspective, to move the industry from crawl to walk, and then eventually from walk to run. Run is a perfect, is a scenario where you see, multiple drones, cargo drones, are all different cargo capacities flying, across the nation. Obviously, this all has to be certified, check marked, approved. That's a given. So that's the run stage. So today we are operating maybe a handful of drones with limited cargo capacity, but eventually the goal is to be able to fly larger drones with much larger cargo capacities.
Yeah, definitely. Those are key aspects. Tiana, any other questions that is aimed at the panel?
There is no other questions at this time. So just a reminder, if anybody does have any questions, I encourage you to put it in the chat box so we can address them. I think today is increasing, point of today is increasing awareness. So I will go ahead and just try to keep the conversation going here. We did discuss about a lot today. We discussed about regulations. We discussed about inclusivity. We discussed about social acceptance. If you had to choose one thing, what do you think needs to happen in order to have advanced air mobility in Canada?
I can go first. I think it was Simon that had mentioned this, and I couldn't agree with it more. But it's I think CAM is a great platform. We already have that, so I think we're well ahead of some other countries. But I think it's about having a very specific time frame and assigning things to people, right? Like things that need to be worked on, because I think we're doing a lot of stuff in silo. Conferences and platforms are great like this to share ideas and where we are. But I think having kind of a time frame, having specific, proof of concepts or pilots, or even the larger goals where we want to be and what everyone needs to work towards, and then coming every quarter and updating everyone. I think that's going to see some tangible move forward. And then, of course, hand in hand, awareness to the public, right? Awareness, because awareness and acceptance kind of come hand in hand. If people don't know about it, they're going to be concerned as to why are there drones flying over me with cargo or whatever. They don't know about the fact that, they're past clearance and they're safe and the government knows about it and everything else. So I think awareness, campaigns, promotion, that's going to be really important as well.
If I can add to it, we are basically, this is the future of transportation, right? We are doing something that's never been done before, right? We have embarked on this journey, and like I said before, there's so much being done around us. There's so much expertise in the marketplace. There's so much knowledge. We just need access to it, and we need to have some kind of a centralized, consolidated, quality access to information. I think that is good because we are in a very fast-paced industry. Things are evolving by the day, right? If we have access to the key content, I think that's going to help us propel this industry.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I don't know, any comments from you, Tiara or Simon, on this? I'm going to go around anyways, asking maybe for some last thoughts, but as we wrap up. But certainly, we definitely have an option here, a strong option to be leaders. I think Tiara mentioned that earlier. And we have everything here in Canada. We can certainly rival some of the projects around the globe. And I think Canada is attracting a lot of foreign investment. A lot of the eVTOL companies are coming into Canada. And I think we will end up solving the funding issue. But maybe as a wrap up, going around the table a little bit, just final thoughts. May just go to Simon first, just from your standpoint, just as a wrapper from your perspective for this panel.
I think we have everything it takes in Canada to be leaders in the space, both on the industrial side, to lean in with the OEMs, to have these aircraft designed and produced here, and from a community standpoint, to have them to integrate advanced air mobility into our lives, to integrate communities, to be more equitable. So I think we have everything we need here, and there are a lot of opportunities, and they outweigh the challenges, in my opinion. And I look forward to it, that's for sure. So I'll just wrap it up there for myself.
Okay, great. And Tiara, go to you. What last word from your perspective? I'm sure we could talk about this for quite some time, but some key messages from your standpoint.
It's my favorite topic, or one of my favorite topics for sure. I think I'll just reiterate that Canada is already leading in this space. What we need to do is we need to continue leading and not fall behind. And in order to do that, we need to come together as a community. We need resources, and the technology is already here. It's already happening. And so let's have fun.
Great. Thank you, Tiara. And over to you, Linda.
I guess from an airport perspective, I guess a call of action is for all of the airport operators that are listening or that are interested, get involved. I don't think it's too early. I think, you can, as I mentioned, choose a SME, choose a department that makes sense, and give this as one of their files for them to be focused and find ways to engage with the ecosystem that's already created and just get involved.
Great. And yourself, Amit?
I'll just add by saying, this is the future of transportation. This is the future that we're all aiming towards. From an Air Canada perspective, we've already shown our commitment to this industry, be it cargo drones, be it electric aircraft, commitments towards our sustainability goals. And, being an advocate of the industry, we do a lot to promote Canada and CAM and any other organizations on a global front. Let's work together. Like everybody said, we can't do this alone. We need to be aligned. We need to have a common voice. We need to be able to, feed off each other's energy and share information. To me, sharing and communicating is going to be key.
So well said. And that's why we all get along so well. I mean, there's just so much to be said and done about AM, but certainly, success of AM in Canada does depend on leaders such as yourselves. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your time today, your thoughts, and I know you're going to continue both through CAM and through individual initiatives to continue building on this AM dream that will become a reality. And maybe we'll try to beat Paris if we can for 2024, if we can for sure. But thank you all. This is an exciting time, and certainly we're looking at AM moving forward. So thank you to all the panelists again. If there's any questions, of course, I think there was a slide that was up to. Please have a look at the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility website. There's a lot of activities there. Of course, YDR, CAE, Esquire, and Air Canada as well on their website, and to communicate with the group here for more information. And definitely encourage all of you that are there today listening to this to check the CSPC website for other schedules and panels that'll be around. A lot of exciting topics that are ongoing. So with that, I think I want to close and thank you to the panel again. Truly appreciate to have you here today, and an honor to have you on board as well.